Hello, September, what is it, 30th already. Heading into October now. As you can see, the sky behind me is kind of showing that. Had a beautiful day yesterday, and now we're at 53, and that's about as high as we're going to get, I think, for the rest of the year. It's mid to high 50s probably. So winter's definitely on its way. Went to the Washington State USC game last night. It's pretty cool. First time I've been down in Pullman. Got a great little culture down there. Small stadium, only 33,000. So obviously with number 5 USC coming in, that place was rocking and packed to over capacity, and a lot of, it's a really small town down in Pullman, for a college town. And they've got it's just really like almost like a university rallying around like small town ideologies. So it's kind of cool. It's a cool little college down there. If you go, getting there it's hilarious because it's just like it's in the middle of nowhere, and you're just driving through miles and miles of rolling fields and hills and occasional pine forest, and all of a sudden this university pops up in the middle of nowhere. So it was pretty cool, and Washington ended up beating them 30-27, so knocking off the 5th ranked team in the country. Pretty big deal for Washington State, and they got quite a little program going on down there, so props to them. I'm not a Cougars fan, but anybody that beats USC is all good in my book. I'm a Notre Dame fan, so USC is one of our arch enemies, since we don't play Michigan anymore. So today I'm going to do a little talking about the weather and climate, what's going on going forward, or what may be going on going forward with our climate, what that means for food, what that means for what kind of responsibility we all need to take on in producing some of our own food, and the solar minimum. I guess we're kind of in this multi-cycle where it's different layers of solar minimum cycles that are kind of coming around at the same time. So there's the 11.2 year cycle, solar minimum to solar maximum, that we're hitting coming up soon. And then that's compounded with like a longer 400-something year solar minimum cycle. And I think there might be another solar minimum cycle that's on top of that. That's, every few thousand years or something. But I guess all this is pretty well documented by ancient cultures, especially in Japan and China. They tend to have a really long-term perspective and keep the history close. They really try to plan for things on a broad societal scale, rather than a bunch of individuals kind of just fending for their own, which seems to be more of the Western world ways, which is good. That offers more freedom, right? The Western world tends to have more freedoms, ability to kind of pursue your own path, whereas the Eastern cultures tend to be more oppressive to the individual and kind of move the whole collective culture in a direction that might be better for the collective, but could be pretty oppressive to the individual. So, but anyways, I think we're definitely coming into a time when, from everything that I've seen, where it's going to start getting really, really hard to produce food the way we produce it throughout the world for the most part. You have the erosion of topsoils in the Western world, and they're already struggling, and they just keep having to add more and more of Monsanto's chemically adulterated products onto the land to get something out of it, and that product is, it's junk, nutrient deficient. It's basically just, looks like and smells like what it's supposed to be, but certainly at a biological level it is not. And then you've got, these solar minimums, does that have something to do, is that the reason they keep pushing the debt system along, even though the debt system's dead? They keep trying to kick the can a little bit further down the road. because we have this massive pending global food crisis on the horizon that could, mean pretty bad things for most countries around the globe. And does that have to do with the chemtrails? Are the chemtrails part of that program? Where Cliff was saying, Cliff has said some of this, and it's matched up a lot with other people I've looked at. So if the chemtrails, I'm sure they have more than one agenda, the chemtrails. But are they trying to block out these new rays that are part of the solar minimum that are really detrimental to life species, vegetation and crops we grow and things along that line. And this is going to be accompanied by a mini ice age. So, just trying to piece all the, you hear all these different things from all over the place, and you try to piece them together in your mind and come up with some kind of hypothesis to what the future holds for your family in your area, and then you expand that outward, all the way up to globally. And I gotta turn the heat on, man. Chilly, driving me crazy. Getting cold. But so you try to piece it all together and kind of make this conclusion in your mind of, okay, what do I need to do to plan for this? And I've heard several people that are not related, as far as being a part of like the same group that speaks on YouTube or other social media or puts out podcasts. People from all over the place, different realms, no affiliation, and they've all talked about going forward that food is going to be the most valuable commodity or valuable thing, basically, of all, going forward in the near future. And that the demands for, even just food in general, but on top of that, you layer good quality food that is low in toxicity, and, you really have a chance to not only secure food for your family when these supply chains have a real possibility of suffering breakdown, but also, going back to having a realistic opportunity to make a white-collar salary growing, basically farming again, right? Which is possible now, and there's people doing it, and they're doing it awesome on very small acreage. And, it's really this, thought of large expansion. You need 1,000 acres of frickin' soybeans or wheat or whatever. And, even the people that do that, once they get beat down by the large food vendors like General Mills, Kellogg, or whatever it might be, Cargill, they really don't make that much money. Really low cost per an acre, really low profit per an acre, and they keep having to grow bigger and bigger and bigger, and buy more and more expensive shit, so they don't have to hire somebody. They're trying to do this through mechanization, where you might have somebody who's doing 300 to 500 acres of one of these monocultures, and I can find people who are, at the end of the day, money they take home and put in their bank account is the same off an acre and a half of doing a multi-species, market garden style, crop rotations, a lot of eyes on the field. It might not be a lot of eyes, a lot of time of your eyes, personal care. So, generally these smaller market gardens are a husband, possibly a wife, and then a couple in season when it's a busy time season, a couple part-time employees, and they knock it out. And so it's a really good model to follow, and it's a lot better at building soil and less land waste. And obviously these people aren't using chemical fertilizers and pesticides and herbicides. They use smart things like row covers to control pests, and treating their beds properly, and putting in organic material, and so obviously much more sustainable. These guys could farm these same plots for decade after decade without having a degrading effect on the landscape. So that's awesome. It's really cool stuff that they're doing. So I think more and more people are going to start gravitating towards that. And even though as a society we've really been led away from it. We've been taught not to go into farming, not to be into raising livestock. If you combine the large corporations that have really taken over those industries, with the mechanization, with the subsidies that those large corporations get, and then the regulations that really help or really fight to keep the small people out, small operations out, you really have a governing body that has done a really good job of trying to get us away from the land. And so, is this, I'm torn between, okay, is this a solar minimum thing, blah, 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 blah. Is this a natural cycle? Is it compounded by really evil things being done? And I think that's part of the chemtrails. I think, the heavy amounts of aluminum, I think it's probably advertised as trying to, protect us from these weird changes in the earth cycle or in the sun cycle. But I think it's got really nefarious things under the surface. So, I can't, sit there and say it's this or that definitively, but one thing we do know is we know that the system as a whole is not doing us any favors when it comes to being prepared to weather some kind of catastrophe. We do not think ahead. Everything's based upon, sunshine and roses. Don't worry, everything's going to be fine. You can, have a minimalistic lifestyle, not have any real tangible skills, coding aside, things like that, IT stuff aside, right? Because those are skills. If you're really good at IT and stuff, and your skills, and you can use that skill, and that's obviously something that is not being pushed away. But as far as like real craftsmanship and farming and permaculture style, but you're seeing the subculture come up underneath. We always have this like silent resistance, because inherently, if we take time to look inside, we can recognize the importance of having the connection, and that we keep that subculture alive, that keeps us tied to the earth, that keeps us getting too far away from that dynamic that we depend on. We all depend on earthworms. I mean, when it comes down to it, we depend on bacteria and fungus and little microbes running around in the soil when it's all said and done. I mean, and air quality, and this unseen world that we just drive by every day or walk over every day and don't really take into consideration that every breath we take, every bite of food we put in our mouth, the health of our body is all dependent on that world that's seemingly invisible until you really take a close look and try to find that connection with it. So we need to keep that alive. We need to strive to produce more of our own stuff, or support those people that are close to us to do this, because the next 25 years. Sorry, ambulance or fire truck. The next 25 years are definitely going to be worse than the previous 50. There's no doubt about it, and that's across the board. I think the food crisis really has the ability to make everything kind of go into disarray, because that's the most basic necessity. Clean water and food, shelter, clothing, right? Clothing, easiest of those to recover. Not that hard to figure out how to find people that can sew up some shirts and knit some socks. But food takes time, it takes skill. You got to build your soil. You have to you can't be lazy. You have to make sure you can protect from frost and protect from pests, and these pressures are very different. I don't have a lot pressure on pests here. I got aphids, but I get frost like crazy. I have to have a way to keep those plants overnight alive, especially your sensitives, tomatoes and squashes and cucumbers and those kinds of things really get bit quick here, and then it's just like done. It's done. So, raspberries and blueberries are great, but grapes are terrible here. You know, I got some good hardy apple trees that are, you know, really not producing yet for me. They're pretty young, but all in all, you know, I got to get my greenhouse operation going. I got to get some hoop houses in, and then you know, a nicer looking greenhouse, because our house is, you know, our house is pretty nice, and I don't want to, you know, put a dumpy DIY hoop house right next to it, but I definitely want to have a couple dumpy DIY greenhouses on the property, or hoop houses on the property, because I think I'm going to do put the chickens in there in the winter and have them scratch around and refertilize. You know, throw a bunch of carbon in there, wood chips and straw, pine shavings. It keeps them busy. They're scratching, they're pecking around during the day, keeps them warm, gives them a nice secure place, but still allows the sunlight in so they can keep an okay amount of laying production. So, you know, we need to look at our lives and see what we can do in our current circumstance to just prepare our families a little bit better for a future that's not going to be like the past, where we're top dog, we consume and consume and consume with no recourse, and we shove the dollar down everybody's throat, and they're supposed to accept it. I just don't think that's going to be the case for very much longer. And you know, the society's held together by a very thin veil of food security, energy, water. You know, everybody starts fending for themselves as soon as any of those things start to break down. And, you know, hopefully it doesn't come to that kind of thing. But one thing is basically a certainty, and, you know, me being in the restaurant industry, is that food prices are going to continue to skyrocket. So if you're struggling now to pay the bills, you know, combating those things might not be you go out and build a greenhouse, because maybe you don't have the ability to do that, the space to do that. Maybe it means you start a little side job so you can afford to buy in bulk from local farmers, and you can learn how to can and freeze and stuff like that. So you got to increase some kind of equity, whether it's financial equity, so you can buffer yourself against some of these issues and build yourself a little larder, and you don't have to worry about, you know, picking whether you build a larder or you pay your mortgage or your rent, or you need to build your land equity, building up soil, doing some inexpensive greenhouse or hoop houses. I mean, hoop houses are not expensive to build if you DIY them. Look it up. People have tons of stuff out there on how to build them. You can get those 16-foot cattle panels, and you bend them, and then you build wood frames, half-circle frames on either end of it. Run cross beams or support beams down the middle if you're worried about snow load. And I mean, seriously, with the 6mm plastic and everything, you can have a 30-foot long by 16-foot wide. So you take two of those cattle panels, you ridge them in the middle, cross them over and ridge them in the middle. You know, so 16 by 30. So you're looking at, what's that, 480 square foot, and you can get that done for $500 all day. So it doesn't have to be one of these things where you go buy, you know, a $4,000 hoop house kit. You can do it on your own. If you have any way of digging or excavating, you can do kind of a half in the ground greenhouse or hoop house, so that you can get some of the geothermal heat coming up. You can then dig further in and put, you know, the piping for geothermal. You can do a lot of cool little DIY things if that's your route. You know, you're like, okay, I've got some skill, I've got some time, I've got some land, but I don't have a lot of money. You can really go a long way with just some creativity on that front. So I strive for everybody to do that, and also it's just good to get, you know, that you polish those skills, get that connection up, because you never know when you might need them, or you find it a passion, you can turn that into some kind of little consulting gig for yourself and earn a couple extra bucks. I think I want to do a video today of like top 5 things outside of your basics to get. There's a couple really good deals out there I've come across. I might throw them out there. I think I will. That'd be a good little video. Be a short one, maybe like 7-10 minutes. Go over, you know, 5 things that you might want to look at, especially if you live out on a couple acres or more and you've got, you know, some privacy and things like that. I've got some pretty cool things I've come across lately. Trying to think of what else. You know, buy things in bulk, you know, especially this time of year. You know, look around at people that are trying to get rid of their last, you know, if they had an abundant crop or orchard or whatever it was, you know, they had good yield this year and they can't push it all, and they might be, you know, like kind of blemished product. Well, when you go to can something, nobody cares about blemishes, right? It's going in a jar. As long as it's not rotten, as long as it's good quality stuff, you can get this for 20% of what you'd end up spending if it was, you know, just regular what they were selling it for a month ago or whatever. Yeah, you can go in and you could buy bushels of stuff for ridiculously low prices and spend the day canning up applesauce or making cider, whatever it is you want to do. You know, get creative. You got a bunch of people who are like, okay, I've got way too many squash. Okay, well, squash is easy enough to can. So it really just comes down to, what's your entertainment going to be? Are you going to sit there and watch a movie, or are you going to, you know, work on some stuff to kind of move your family forward for that 2 or 3 hours on Friday night or Saturday night or Sunday afternoon, whatever it is? And like I said, you can do all this stuff while the football game's going on. You know, you don't have to give all your attention to something that is energy drawing from you. You can still feed that, you know, desire of you to follow your favorite team or whatever it is, while you do something to you know, improve your skills and improve your family situation. You can cross those over. You don't have to hear everything the damn announcers say. They're idiots anyway. So, anyways, that's that. It'd be interesting to see how the NFL does tomorrow, if everybody kneels and gets a bunch of crap from Trump again. I'll be interested to watch that. It's just, I mean, it's not from a standpoint that I'm all that interested, but it's kind of like this unnecessary, pathetic drama. And the NFL's gotten hurt financially from it, so I think Big Dog's going to say, hey, listen, money's first. I don't give a shit what you guys are trying to prove. Stand up and put your hand over your heart. That's the deal, because it is in their contract after all. That is part of the contract, the NFL contract. So that's it for this video. I'm going to do one more short one today, and I'll get these up as soon as I can. Thanks, guys.